All right, this is a brake job on a Mazda 6, a 2018 model Mazda 6. This is the right rear. And this little thing has an electric parking brake, which is controlled by this wire and that. We're doing the just the pads today, which are down in here on each side. They're not completely wore out, but we've done all the other ones on the other three wheels, so we're doing the last one right here. So what we're gonna have to do first is remove this electrical connection right here and remove the parking brake motor. Whoever designed this system right here needs to be tarred and feathered. I'm not impressed with Mazda designing an electric parking brake. All right, what we'll need to do this job, we got a flathead screwdriver, we have a T40 and a T30 on a ratchet. You don't need a ratchet for this one, I'll show that in a minute. That's for the parking brake. We have a 13 millimeter and a 17 millimeter and a caliper squeezer. This 17 millimeter, I use Craftsman wrenches. I had to modify a little bit because it is too thick to fit on that nut right there. It's kind of like a nut that holds that on, and there's a little lip right here. You can get in here close, right there, and the wrench had to slide over it, so I had to make my wrench thinner to fit on that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put that on and use the 13 millimeter right there to take those loose. But before that, we need to remove the electrical connection for the parking brake motor. And the way I do that is take a flathead screwdriver, push down on that to let it release. And I'll have to get both my hands in here to do this. See if I can set my camera up here. But just wiggle it and it'll pop off. You got to have that right there pushed down so it will release. So let's get that out of the way. Alrighty. And on this right here, you've got to take two of them off. There's one right here, and then you go around on the bottom, and there's one right here. So you need to remove both of them. So I'm gonna set this down and I'll be right back. All right, here we are, we're back. I've got the two bolts out. One went right here and the other went right here. So we'll take those out and set them to the side. All right, the caliper now should, you just wiggle it. You may have to take a screwdriver. And it should shake loose. There it goes. There. All right. Now we've got the caliper upside down. This hose right here, that's your brake line. Right here. Do not take that loose unless you want to have to rebleed your brake system. The reason that we have to take this motor off right here is because there's a shaft, a little screw shaft that runs in from the end and goes all the way down, and you cannot compress. Turn that light around so it's not blinding the camera. So we don't want to compress, we can't compress this without damaging that and the shaft, even if it would go. So right here, we take the T30 and we unscrew this screw right here, and then there's one on the bottom right here. Take those two out. All right, let me do that and I'll be right back. All right, we've removed these two screws. That's what they look like. They got the little star points in there. All right, what we're gonna have to do now is take this little motor. I'm running out of hands. And wiggle it there, and it comes right off. As you can see, inside the middle of that, there's a little shaft in there, and that's what we don't want to damage. I don't know what these things cost. I don't want to find out. So we're going to take and be gentle with that and lay it over here on the ground beside us. All right, and when we look it in here, there's an O-ring right here. Just make sure that's intact. That's what keeps all your grime and debris out. And then on the end, there's a snap ring with the little shaft. This is where the T40 hex thing comes in, because you can grab that and put that right in there just like that, and you can turn it with your fingers. So the way this works, you take your caliper squeezer. This thing, I just want to apologize to everybody because I don't have a camera stand. This is one of the first videos I've made on a do-it-yourself brake job. But you put your caliper squeezer in there, such as that. Get it up here where it's not moving. There we go. Caliper squeezer. T40. And right here, you want to do righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You want to... All right. Hold on a minute. All right, here we go. We're going to screw this in as we tighten down the caliper. And of course I drop everything. If you go too fast on the squeezing of the caliper part and not screwing it, will lock down. So you kind of got to do this all together. And eventually, the little screw right here will bottom out, and it won't turn anymore, but keep screwing your caliper all the way in. Get that compressed. Then you can take and remove the T40 from there, and then you can remove your caliper squeezing tool. All right, now on to the pads. Alrighty, here's your brake pads, one on each side. To remove them, we're going to take the screwdriver and we're just going to push them out, and they will come right out. These aren't too bad. I've replaced a whole lot worse. Alright, we got to pop both of them out and throw them to the side. The new pads, here's the back side. This one right here has what is called, I call it a squeaker. It's when your pads get wore down, it'll start screeching and let you know your pads are wore out. The other one does not have that. When you buy the set for the back, it will come with two of these, and they'll be on one side. For this side, it's here. On the other side, it'll be down here. So they're opposites, because what they want, that sits in there just like this. It's turned around backwards. So your squeaker is down here on the bottom back. So when you go to put these in, I put the front one in first. The outside one, it does not have that squeaker on it. So when you go to put these in, I put them in at an angle, just like so. And the reason we do that is because you have to take right here at the top, there's a little, it's kind of like it's spring loaded. There's a little tab, you got to get that in there. And the way I do that is I just hit it with a wrench just a couple times, and then that'll slide on in nice and tight. Now here's the back one. Remember the squeaky thing? It goes in just like so. It goes in the same way. Alrighty. Now that we got both in, just drop my wrench in case y'all didn't hear that. Take and push these little things right here in just a little bit, so you can bring your caliper on around. Make sure your caliper's gonna slide over right here. Make sure you got enough clearance in there, and get that. Now, the next step will be to put the electric motor for your parking brake back on. I just make sure I got enough clearance on that right there. So I'll pull it back away. I know this is awful close up. I'm sorry. Slide that motor back on and repeat the process. Just put the screws in it and line it back up. All right, I've got the motor back on. Now we're going to slide the caliper, back down over everything here. This is hard to do one-handed. And then push that in. There it goes. All right, we got the caliper back on. It's gonna be a little loose. That's fine. Now slide those bolts back in, tighten them down. Find the other bolt, put it in down here in the bottom. Repeat the process to tighten it down. Remember, using your thin wrench and your 13 millimeter, your thin 17 millimeter and your 13 millimeter, and tighten that back down. The one thing about putting, before I forget, when you put these screws right here back in on that electric motor, that motor housing is plastic. I don't know what the torque value is on those screws, but don't put the Gorilla Grip on them. You'll either strip it out or break that housing. And I'm just not in the mood of buying a motor. So let me get those two caliper bolts tightened down and we'll go from there. All right, I got the two bolts tightened down. But the last thing we're going to do is take this electrical cable and hook it back up, and you should hear it snap. And it should not pull back out. All right, one thing about these, when you put them back on, it will move back and forth. Now, the reason that is being is there's more clearance between the caliper, the caliper piston, and the brake pads. When you put this back together, that's normal. But when you get in the car and crank it up and mash your brake pedal, that gap will be taken up. You'll get in the car and mash the brake pedal a couple times, and that will tighten down. One thing that you want to do too is when you first get in the car, activate the parking brake to make sure it is working properly. That way everything, the slack adjustment in that design will tighten down and work properly. So the next thing we have to do here is put the tire back on, crank it up, and work the brakes a little bit. I always like to take them for a test drive just to make sure the brakes are working. One thing that you need to remember is when you squeeze the calipers, whether it's the front ones or the back ones, unless you have a leak and you have added brake fluid to these Mazdas, over time, when you compress that caliper, the fluid is going back up into the reservoir under the hood. If you have added fluid, there will be extra fluid in there, and it could run out the top if you've added so much. Because when you squeeze that, the fluid's going to go from the calipers all the way back up through the brake system and into the reservoir, and you'll overfill the reservoir. So keep an eye on that if you've added fluid. And always check your brake fluid when you get done with it anyway. If I remember right, the Mazdas use a .3 brake fluid. I think that's what it said in the book. I'd have to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is, a .3 fluid. So the last thing we got to do here is put the tire on, crank it up, actuate the brake pedal a few times, activate the parking brake a few times, and we should be good to go. All right, I want to thank everybody for bearing with me here. This is the first do-it-yourself video I've done on this. I've done a few other ones, but I need to work on the camera. I know that because I don't have a camera mount. I was holding it or tied it up with welding wire. Anyway, I want to thank y'all for paying attention, and if you got any questions or comments, shoot me a comment down in the comment sections on this, and I'll try to answer them. But other than that, I don't know of anything else. I want to thank y'all for being patient and watching the video. Have a good day.